Fate works in mysterious ways. On his daily commute, the student risked everything to snatch a stray cat from the jaws of death on the road. The driver exploded in a fit of road rage, but a courageous schoolgirl stepped in, declaring Jizen's actions heroic. Since his transfer, however, the boy remained a ghost. He existed in the shadows, head bowed and lips sealed. To the masses, he was invisible, but to the female students, he was an enigma they couldn't ignore. One lazy afternoon, as he drifted into slumber, the girls gathered like moths to a flame, admiring his features. One bold student captured his sleeping face, later revealing the photo with a bashful grin. But destiny has a cruel sense of timing. At that precise second, her boyfriend stormed into the room. Jealousy flared instantly. He began to ridicule the new transfer, mocking his slender frame in silence. The girl tried to diffuse the tension, urging Taku to take a seat before the bell rang. Yet, the embers of rage were already lit. Later, Taku spotted his girlfriend cooling Jizen down with a fan. She didn't even acknowledge Taku's presence, her attention entirely fixed on the newcomer. Consumed by blinding jealousy, Taku lost focus during the match, and karma struck a ball slammed directly into his face with a sickening thud. He forced a laugh to save face, masking the pain, but the murderous glare he shot at the couple revealed the storm brewing beneath the surface. The game ended, but the violence was just beginning. Taku dragged the offender to the rooftop, forcibly shaving his head to ensure no one would ever dare humiliate him again. By a twist of fate, this rooftop was Jizen's sanctuary. From the shadows, the silent transfer student witnessed the entire display of tyranny. Taku turned his malice toward Jizen, threatening to give him the same jagged haircut. But the protagonist didn't flinch. He simply stared back with eyes as deep and calm as an abyss. Taku tried to provoke fear, but he hit a wall of indifference. Unnerved, he retreated, claiming he was only sparing the new kid to prevent a riot among the fangirls. Darkness fell. As Jizen made his way home, 2 lackeys intercepted him, delivering a summons from the king of the school. When Jizen arrived at the meeting spot, the boyfriend didn't speak with words. He thrust the girl's phone into Jizen's face. The screen illuminated the stolen photo of Jizen. She tried to plead her case, claiming it was meaningless and begging Jizen to flee, but her voice trembled. Taku, consumed by an inferno of rage, delivered a brutal slap that sent her crashing to the concrete. "Why do you choose this trash over me?" He screamed like a madman, but she found her courage. "You call yourself a boyfriend. You're the one always out partying with other women." Her truth struck a nerve. Furious, he drove his foot into her stomach. But as he raised his hand for the finishing blow, a shadow moved. Jizen blocked the strike effortlessly. Taku roared, throwing a punch with every ounce of his strength, but against Jizen, it was as effective as hitting a steel wall. When the bully swung again, Jizen vanished from his sight, dodging instantly before landing a catastrophic counterpunch that crumbled Taku to the ground. A pin could have dropped in the silence that followed. The other delinquents rushed in a pack, but Jizen dismantled them one by one with surgical precision. The beast had awakened. Jizen turned back to the boyfriend, raining down a barrage of merciless blows until the terrified girls finally intervened to stop the slaughter. In that blood-soaked moment, she realized the truth. He wasn't just quiet, he was a monster suppressing his own darkness. Let us rewind the clock to Miriam's perspective. Leaving school, she had witnessed the thugs surrounding Jizen, dragging him toward Taku's domain. Fear rooted her to the spot as she watched the abduction, her mind racing to comprehend the danger lurking in the air. But curiosity outweighed fear. Clutching her umbrella like a shield, she sprinted to the corner, hiding in the shadows to witness the inevitable clash. What she saw shattered her reality. Jizen was not a victim, he was a wild beast let loose, decimating the boys as they screamed in desperate agony for mercy. The violence was beautiful and terrifying. She stood frozen, unable to look away from the chaotic masterpiece unfolding before her. The battle ended. Jizen, looking dazed as the adrenaline faded, walked out into the rain, passing the very spot where Miriam cowered under her umbrella. Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, a silent exchange of souls. She extended her umbrella, a gesture of peace in the storm, but Jizen turned away, rejecting the warmth, and vanished into the cold downpour. The next morning, Taku's seat was empty. The boyfriend, though in this school, truancy was hardly news. It was Jizen's absence that sent ripples through the class. Yena sat in gloom, the world feeling gray and hollow without his silent presence anchoring her. While the students wallowed in confusion elsewhere in the city, the ripples of the fight were turning into waves. A witness to the massacre was trembling as he reported to a higher authority. The man listening was stunned to hear that Taku, a top fighter, was now lying in a hospital bed. The boss's voice was low and dangerous as he asked for the damage report. The lackey swallowed hard. Taku needed extensive hospitalization for severe facial fractures. Even worse, he refused visitors, his pride shattered more completely than his bones. The report continued, revealing that 4 of their best fighters were decimated in the brawl. The boss narrowed his eyes, demanding the name of the monster capable of physically destroying Taku. The answer was a name no one knew: Jizen, the transfer student, an unknown entity. The boss couldn't believe 4 men had fallen to a complete nobody who hadn't even made a name for himself yet. One of the heavy hitters grabbed the snitch by the throat, hoisting him up. "And where were you hiding to save your own skin?" The boy gasped for air, making a pathetic excuse. He claimed he didn't jump in because 5 against 1 seemed unfair, masking his cowardice with false honor. He was thrown against the wall like a rag doll. The boss, radiating a menacing aura, demanded to know Jizen's origins. "No one knows," the boy stammered. "He never speaks. He is a complete mystery." The heavy hitter slapped the boy across the face, disgusted by his uselessness, and demanded any identifying trait that would help them hunt this Jizen down. With a flush of embarrassment, the lackey admitted that Jizen possessed god-tier visuals and the aura of a wealthy heir. He couldn't help but ramble about the target's undeniable charisma. The boss silenced him with a heavy blow to the head. He didn't want a love letter. He needed intel on this silent, mysterious predator named Jizen. Jizen was an enigma, a brutal fighter hiding behind a face carved by angels. A truly dangerous combination. The boss's obsession with Jizen was bordering on madness. Meanwhile, the next day, the school routine resumed under a heavy atmosphere. As Jizen approached his locker to stow his gear, a pair of eyes watched him from the shadows. The spy had his orders uncover Jizen's true nature. Remembering the boss's murderous glare, he knew failure was not an option, but actually executing the mission was a nightmare. Jizen swung his locker open, revealing a hollow emptiness inside. Suddenly, a vibration buzzed against the metal. A lonely phone sat there, lighting up with incoming messages. Jizen lifted the device. The screen flashed with congratulations, a suspicious claim that he had won the phone for free. It was an outdated model, yet the messenger app functioned perfectly, promising a listening ear for any of Jizen's troubles. The protagonist scanned his surroundings, his instincts flaring, but the 2 spies managed to stay just out of his line of sight. Clearly, a girl had left it there, her heart racing with nerves. But Jizen, he treated the gift like air, leaving it abandoned on the cold metal as he walked away. His indifference was chilling. Seizing the chance, the spy scrambled out of hiding. He snatched up the discarded phone, desperate to see if it was unlocked and what secrets it held. Wham! A sudden impact from behind sent him sprawling to the floor. Before he could react, the girl who hit him snatched the phone and bolted, left eating dust. The spy could only stare in confusion. Who was that girl, and what just happened? Rage boiled within him. He cursed the sheer audacity of modern students, wondering when bullies became so feral these days. Elsewhere, Yuri chattered happily to Yena about her aunt's new puppies, dreaming of adopting one despite her father's strict rules. But her words fell on deaf ears. Yena was lost in a world of her own, consumed by worry. Jizen had been missing for 2 days. Then, as she gazed down the hall, her breath caught. It was him. He stood like a statue, his eyes void of emotion. For Yena, seeing him walk through those doors left her completely speechless. Abandoning all dignity, she tossed her bag to Yuri and sprinted toward him. She slammed into his chest with a desperate hug, shocking the entire hallway. Tears streamed down her face. She poured out her relief, swearing she would never forget the debt she owed him for saving her life. From the shadows, the spy confirmed his theory. The girls were absolutely obsessed with Jizen. He quickly typed his report. Subject is late, beloved by women, and still refuses to speak a single word. As the sun set, the protagonist took his usual route home, but the path was blocked. Trouble was waiting. The thugs sized him up immediately, even from a distance. Jizen's presence was overwhelming compared to the average student. A sharp whistle cut the air. Engines roared to life as they circled behind him, trapping the boy in a ring of exhaust and intimidation. They revved their engines, cutting off his escape route. They demanded to know if he was Jizen. The boy remained silent as a grave, which was all the confirmation they needed. The leader barked an order, telling him to hop on the bike. This wasn't a request, it was a summons. He sneered, asking if Jizen knew the name Kong Duo from Gizio Technical High. A living legend who conquered the school hierarchy in his second year, Kong was in the top 3, a monster from a different dimension compared to Jizen's school of nerds. And now, Kong wanted an audience. The thug grinned, assuring him he wouldn't die. At least, not yet. It was merely an invitation, but Jizen didn't flinch. His statue-like stillness enraged them, and the shouting began. One of the goons snatched his backpack, threatening to shatter his legs if he didn't comply. He warned Jizen to accept the ride while he was still feeling generous. Jizen's response, he simply let go of the bag and walked away. The disrespect sent the gang into a frenzy, and they throttled their engines to chase him down. Jizen dove into the nearest alley. The first biker miscalculated the turn, slamming face first into the concrete wall, but the second one kept up the pursuit. Not even a massive flight of stairs could stop this maniac. He gunned the engine, the motorcycle climbing the steps with terrifying power. He was closing in, but halfway up, Jizen didn't run. With a casual flick of his foot, he launched a heavy trash bag straight into the rider's path. The impact was catastrophic. Gravity claimed its prize. The rider tumbled backward down the stairs, crashing directly onto his partner, who had just recovered from hitting the wall. Watching the bike bounce down the steps, the thug screamed in horror at the chaos Jizen had unleashed. Adrenaline surged as they scrambled to their feet, desperate to run down the escaping prey. Just as they rounded the corner, they pushed their bodies to the limit. But fate was cruel. The moment they turned, a massive, daunting staircase loomed before them. And there, halfway up the steps, they spotted the elusive target making his escape, lungs burning. They finally cornered him. But as the figure turned, shock replaced triumph. It wasn't him. The realization ignited a blaze of fury in their eyes. Blinded by rage, they lashed out at the innocent stranger, punishing him simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. As blows and curses rained down on the victim, Jizen observed silently from the high ground. Like a ghost, he vanished into the shadows, leaving no trace behind. Meanwhile, back at the gang's hideout, the trembling minions delivered the bad news the target had slipped through their fingers. The chubby lieutenant, his temper short and explosive, screamed at their incompetence before delivering a brutal kick to punish their failure. They stammered excuses about the alleyway being a labyrinth, but the boss wasn't listening. His anxiety was spiraling out of control. He turned his piercing gaze to Sunman. Had he dug up any dirt on Jizen trembling? Sunman handed over his phone, claiming he had done his absolute best. Candiel scanned the screen, but his eyes narrowed. Only 3 pathetic scraps of information. Fury erupted. He roared, demanding if this joke was what Sunman called an investigation. In an instant, the chubby enforcer slammed Sunman to the ground beside the others. The boss commanded them to release the boy for now, but he had a new directive: drag Jizen to the back gate after school tomorrow. No excuses. He sneered, doubting Sunman's capability, and ordered Disik to take full responsibility for the capture operation. He needed answers about Jizen by tomorrow, or else. As the chubby enforcer bowed to the order, Sunman felt the walls closing in, terrified by the dangerous web he was caught in. The next morning brought a fresh wave of tension. Sunman stood at the vending machine. He purchased 2 sodas, his hand shaking slightly. A classmate approached, grinning, assuming the extra drink was a gift for him, but Sunman shut him down cold. "Get your own," he snapped. Confused, the classmate asked who the second drink was actually for. Just then, Jizen walked by. Sunman's eyes widened. This was it, his chance to strike. He hurried after the lone wolf, feigning a cheerful good morning and extending the soda as a peace offering. Desperate to clear the air, he stammered that he wasn't really part of Tak's crew. He swore he only hung out with them out of necessity. He even claimed that seeing Tak get destroyed the other day gave him a thrill of vindication, since he couldn't fight back himself. With a shaky smile, he insisted that watching the bully fall lifted a burden from his shoulders. He was just there to say, "Thank you." But Jizen didn't even break stride. He ignored the boy completely. walking on as if Sunman didn't exist. Typical behavior for a loner of his caliber. Panic set in. How was he supposed to lure Jizen to the back gate now? But the terrifying memory of the chubby enforcer's wrath pushed him forward. The morning dragged on until the lunch bell finally rang. Students flooded out of the classroom, eager for food. Jizen, however, remained at his desk, drifting into a peaceful slumber. When he finally stirred, Sunman was spying on him from the doorway, realizing suddenly why Jizen was never seen in the noisy cafeteria. The lone wolf preferred solitude. Jizen headed straight for his sanctuary, the same secluded spot he always claimed. Upon reaching the bench, he found a familiar sight, the forgotten cell phone waiting for him. A message flashed on the screen. Bread for lunch again today. His senses sharpened. He spotted a figure crouching nearby, trying to stay hidden. It was the girl. REM. Communicating through the digital void. Seeing the phone in his hand, she seized the moment. Her fingers flew across her keypad, bombarding him with texts. "Do you always eat alone up here?" she typed. She admitted that this was her sanctuary too, and she had been watching him from afar. Her desire was simple yet profound. She just wanted to talk. Jizen scanned the rooftop for the sender. Ping. Look to your left. He turned, and there she was, raising a shy hand in greeting before quickly ducking back down. Another message appeared. "It's hard for me to face people directly." She wrote that she heard he was the silent type, confessing that she shared the same struggle. "Why don't you ever speak?" she asked, probing the walls he had built around himself. Just as Jizen prepared to type a reply, the peace was shattered. A loud voice boomed across the rooftop. It was Sunman again, feigning surprise. "Oh, what a coincidence," he lied, holding up his own bread roll. "What are you having?" Met with icy silence, Sunman didn't deter. He plopped down right next to Jizen, declaring, "I guess I'll eat with you then." The air turned suffocatingly awkward. They chewed in silence until Sunman let out a pathetic, staged whimper to grab Jizen's attention. Fake tears welled in his eyes. "I don't actually have any friends," he sobbed. "That's why I hang around Tak's crew. I just didn't want to be left out." He looked at Jizen with pleading eyes. "Since we're both outcasts," he proposed, "we should stick together. We should be friends." But his words fell on deaf ears. Jizen remained a statue. Sunman's desperate plan was crumbling before it even began. Even the crocodile tears failed to move him. Our protagonist simply stood up to leave. Panic surged in Sunman. He couldn't let his efforts be for nothing. He grabbed Jizen's arm in a last-ditch effort. "Are we friends or not?" But Jizen shook him off like dust. He walked away without a word, leaving the fool alone with his rejection. As the clock ticked down, the Sikh bombarded the boy with frantic messages. "Where is he? Why haven't you brought the target to me yet?" The final bell rang, signaling the end of class, and panic clawed at the boy's throat as he tried to formulate a plan. Giving up was not an option. He gritted his teeth and went on the hunt for his prey, but the target was nowhere to be found. Desperation set in had he already slipped away. He rushed to the 5th grade classroom, initially seeing nothing, until he spotted a solitary figure sitting by the window, gazing at the world outside. Jizen sat there like the protagonist of a melancholic movie. But the phone buzzed relentlessly. The Sikh's patience had run out, forcing the boy to make his move. Taking a deep breath to steady his nerves, he called out to Jizen. He lied through his teeth, claiming his mother was ecstatic to hear he made a friend and wanted to meet him at her workplace immediately. "Just come with me and pretend to be my friend," he pleaded. It was a dirty tactic, using filial piety as bait, and he held his breath, waiting for a response. Jizen remained silent but stood up to follow. The hook was set. The boy quickly took the lead. "To get to my mom's work, we need to cut through the back gate," he urged, guiding the lamb toward the slaughterhouse. He knew the rules of this district well in these streets. Naivety was a death sentence. Fingers trembling, he sent a covert warning to Desik. "We are approaching the back gate now." Suddenly, a massive figure surged from the shadows. Desik slammed into Jizen with the force of a truck, sending the smaller boy stumbling. But Desik caught him by the backpack strap before he hit the ground. "Watch your step. The boss didn't wait this long, just for you to face plant." With a surge of brute strength, he tossed Jizen against the concrete wall like a sack of garbage. "So, this is the famous silent one?" Desik sneered, gripping him by the throat. "Pretty face, but your aura is absolutely pathetic." Jizen's eyes flashed cold. He planted a foot squarely on the bully's chest and launched him backward, shattering the hold. But in the chaos, disaster struck. Jizen's phone slipped from his pocket, skittering dangerously toward a gaping sewer grate. Disik roared, charging back in like a raging bull. Is running away all you're good at, coward. He threw a heavy punch, but Jizen blocked it with crossed arms. The impact slid him closer to the edge, but he managed to snatch his phone just before it plunged into the abyss. Fury exploded in Desik's eyes. I'll crush you with this next one. The real battle had finally begun. Think that skinny frame can handle my weight class? Desik mocked, looming over him with murderous intent. From the shadows, the traitor watched, guilt gnawing at his gut. Desik was going to kill him. Block this if you can, the bully screamed, unleashing a devastating haymaker. But the clever young master was faster. He swung his backpack as a shield, absorbing the heavy impact. The force slammed him into the wall, but he stood firm. Desik blinked in shock. Huh, you're smarter than you look. Jizen calmly emptied his bag, lightening the load. Desik laughed, rushing in blindly. Cheap tricks won't save you now. The strike came, but Jizen flowed around it like water. In a flash, he whipped the backpack strap around Desik's ankle, yanking with precise, explosive power. Gravity took over. The heavy bully hit the pavement with a bone-shaking thud. Desik's brain couldn't even process the takedown. Before he could recover, Jizen was already airborne. A lightning-fast kick snapped directly into the bully's jaw. The shock was palpable. Where was this monstrous power hiding inside such a slender frame? Bam! Another impact rocked Desik's skull. The traitor watched with his jaw on the floor. He couldn't believe the hunter was getting beaten to a pulp. Desik lay there, his face a bloody mess. Jizen turned his back, his eyes filled with nothing but cold, absolute disdain. He reached for his fallen phone, a fatal mistake. It's not over yet. Desik scrambled up and landed a cowardly sucker punch to Jizen's chest. The impact sent Jizen crashing to the dirt. Desik snatched the phone, grinning through his bruises. Important to you. Good. Too bad I have orders to bring you in breathing, or I'd finish you here. An engine roared, the getaway ride arrived. Desik hopped on the bike, dangling the prize. You want this back. Come to Ali Park. As the bike peeled away, he shouted, We've got a hell of a welcome party waiting for you. The traitor rushed over, feigning concern. Are you okay? But he froze. Jizen stood there, completely unscathed. Your phone. What if they leak your private life? The boy stammered, pouring salt in the wound. You'll be ruined if that data gets out. Forget my mom, he urged, pushing the agenda. You have to hurry to Ali Park before it's too late. The trap was set. The boy had played his role to perfection. Now, he just had to see if the bait would work. Without a word, our protagonist rose and marched into the distance. The boy watched in awe. Jizen was walking straight into the lion's den. Jizen stood before the imposing wooden staircase, a gateway into the lion's den. He began his ascent, ignoring the menacing glares of the delinquents lining his path. As he reached the summit, the shadows parted to reveal the true threat. A sea of enemies awaited him. An entire gang stood in formation, creating a gauntlet of intimidation. At the end of this human corridor sat their king, his eyes lighting up with twisted delight at Jizen's arrival. He dangled the stolen phone like a trophy, taunting his prey. Is this the treasure you risked your life to retrieve? Jizen stepped forward without fear, focused solely on his property, but the leader just sneered, disappointed by the lack of secrets in the call history. Boring, the leader thought. The only thing of interest was a string of text messages from a girl who was watching Jizen from the shadows. Unfazed by the taunts, the boy halted directly in front of the boss. He extended a hand, his silence demanding the return of what was his. The leader's grin widened. Who is she? A girlfriend or a budding romance? His curiosity was piqued by this silent mystery. Bored by the silence, he decided to spice things up. His fingers flew across the screen, crafting a malicious trap. Music. With a dark chuckle, he hit send. Miles away, Ariam's phone lit up with a message from the very number she had given to Jizen. Music. The text was bold and direct. Come to Ali Park. If you show up, you're officially my girlfriend. It was the ultimate test of affection. If she took the bait after reading that, her feelings for Jizen were undeniable. If you two hook up, you owe me a drink. The leader joked. But Jizen remained a statue, his hand still outstretched, unwavering. The playful atmosphere vanished. Music. You really want this back? the boss asked, mentioning the trouble his men went through to lure him there. He mentioned Taku, that reckless fool. The leader always knew that guy's stupidity would lead to chaos eventually. We go way back, he mused. Elementary school classmates. Actually, it's music. He asked if the kid was ready to pay the price for retrieval. Still, Jizen said nothing, and that absolute silence only fueled the leader's twisted amusement. The deal was struck. Survive against my men, he declared, and the phone is yours. He lectured the transfer student on the laws of the jungle. In this neighborhood, the hierarchy wars were fierce, and the moment Jizen engaged with Taku, and he unwittingly stepped onto the battlefield. Show me what you've got, the leader commanded. Immediately, the heavyset thug charged music. Thirsty for revenge, he threw a massive punch. Jizen weaved aside effortlessly, leaving the brute punching air. Humiliated, the thug screamed for backup. The entire mob descended on him. Jizen moved like a ghost, slipping past strikes without throwing a single punch. He tried to block, but the numbers were overwhelming. A fist broke through his guard. Jizen covered up, absorbing the impact, but he was knocked down to the feet of another attacker. A brutal kick connected with his face. Like wolves on a wounded deer, they swarmed him. Ruthless kicks rained down on his prone form. The boss watched from his throne, perplexed. Why is he only defending? The boy refused to counterattack. He wondered if the boy simply didn't care about the ranking system, or if there was a deeper reason for his restraint. His lieutenant noticed something chilling. Boss, look, he hasn't made a sound. Despite the brutal beating, Jizen was silent. Was his pride stronger than his survival instinct? The boss became obsessed. He needed to hear this stoic fighter break. A cruel idea formed in his mind. He stood up and shouted a challenge to his men. Make him scream, and the limited edition Nike Air Jordans are yours. Greed ignited in the eyes of the gang members. The violence intensified. The assault became relentless, yet Jizen endured it all in silence. Fight back, the boss roared, desperate to see the beast beneath the calm. Prove you're a rare breed. Desik pushed through the crowd, demanding clear space. He delivered a devastating kick to the downed boy. Where's that tough guy attitude now? Jizen lay on the concrete, his face bruised and bloody, but his spirit remained unbroken. One thug decided to end it. He grabbed a heavy stone, eyes wild with malice. I'll make him scream, he sneered, ready to smash Jizen's skull to fix his appearance. But just as the rock descended, the boss kicked the weapon away. Are you insane? He snapped. Do you want to die for being so pathetic? He hauled Jizen up by his collar, bringing him eye to eye. Do you like pain? He hissed. What are you hiding? He vowed that this torture wouldn't stop until Jizen revealed his true worth. From a safe distance, the coward who set this up watched in terror. He realized too late that this gang was a monster compared to Taku's crew. Suddenly, a figure approached. It was REM. Music. At that exact moment, the phone in the boss's hand buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A new text command, let Jizen go. Sharp eyes scanned the perimeter. There she was. REM stood at the edge of the park, phone in hand, trembling but determined. A wicked smile returned to the leader's face. Look who's here, he whispered to Jizen. Maybe now you'll find the will to fight. He snapped his fingers, a silent order sent. While he distracted her by waving the phone, a henchman crept up from her blind spot. The trap was set. The thug seized her slender arm, his eyes widening not with mercy, but with a twisted appreciation for her stunning beauty. She struggled like a trapped bird to escape, but his grip tightened like a steel vice as he sneered, demanding to know where she thought she could run. Meanwhile, a coward watched from the shadows of a tree, paralyzed by terror as he saw his crush in danger, yet he did absolutely nothing to save her. The delinquent dragged the girl into the center of the pack, mocking her to look at the pathetic state of her so-called boyfriend, before tossing her toward the gang boss like a trophy. In the midst of the chaos, she and Jizen locked eyes. Time seemed to freeze for a few seconds as shared memories flashed between them. There she stood, trembling with fear, clutching her injured arm. Even the henchmen were stunned that she had actually walked into the lion's den willingly. The large thug, Desik, laughed and asked if she came to be that bastard's girlfriend, mocking that Jizen was a bit too busy being taught a lesson to protect anyone. Her fingers flew across her phone screen, displaying a desperate message that he was just a friend, and pleading once again for them to let him go. The boss narrowed his eyes. annoyed by her silence, and demanded to know her name. No. Receiving no spoken answer, a cruel realization dawned on the boss. He had found the pathetic weakness connecting these two outcasts. Laughter erupted from the gang as they mocked the pair, calling them freaks for communicating only through text messages. The boss declared a twisted game. It didn't matter who did it, but whoever forced them to speak would earn a reward. Disick asked with a grin if breaking the girl counted, and the boss gave a sinister nod. The pack descended upon the girl, harassing her with vile taunts, claiming that since she couldn't speak, she couldn't say no to anything they did. Rough hands pinned her arms while others violated her space, toying with her hair, while Jizen was forced to watch his friend suffer. The boss taunted Jizen, asking if he would continue to just sit there and resist, while his goons continued to assault the girl, gripping her face with zero hesitation. One of the delinquents leaned in close, his voice dripping with malice, asking why she kept her mouth shut. But as the thug tried to force her to speak, a sudden impact sent a shockwave through the group. Jizen watched as the attacker dropped to the ground. Before the thug's partner could react, a fist slammed into his face. The guy in the hat barely stammered a question before a devastating blow turned his lights out, and he collapsed to the dirt like a sack of potatoes. The boss's eyes widened with thrill. The sleeping dragon had finally awakened. Jizen was fighting for real. Having cleared the space around the girl, Jizen roared and charged at the remaining mob, while Aryam watched in terror at his explosive violence. The entire gang swarmed him like angry hornets. Punches rained down on Jizen, but he stood his ground. He caught a kicking leg midair and used it to hurl the attacker into his friends, but another enemy lunged at him instantly. Jizen seized the attacker by his hair, delivering a rapid-fire barrage of punches to his face. He sensed an incoming kick from the side and dodged with supernatural reflexes. He snatched the offender's leg, sweeping his balance and slamming him hard against the unforgiving pavement. Disick charged in like a raging bull, vowing to end this. Ignoring the thug screaming for mercy at his feet, Jizen delivered a precision kick to the chin, silencing him instantly. He abandoned the fallen trash and dashed toward the large tank. Effortlessly weaving past the heavy haymaker Disick tried to land. Using the giant's own leg as a step for leverage, Jizen launched himself upward, driving a flying knee straight into Disick's face, but he wasn't finished yet. Gravity was merely a suggestion as Jizen followed up with a brutal kick to the skull. The boss watched with intense fascination, realizing he had found a diamond in the rough. This boy was a rare find, but the battle raged on. Disick, fueled by adrenaline, managed to grab Jizen with his bear-like grip, spitting blood and missing a tooth. The large thug roared in humiliation, furious about being beaten by the shrimp for the second time. Jizen raised his arms high, descending like the judgment of God. He drove his elbows into Disick's eyes and face repeatedly, shattering teeth and consciousness alike until the giant collapsed. A stunned silence fell over the lot as everyone stared in disbelief. No one expected to see the invincible Disick defeated. Yet, the fight continued as Jizen turned his fury against the entire gang. It was a symphony of violence. Opponent after opponent crumbled under his fists, while the boss watched, captivated by the boy's lethal efficiency. Desperation set in. One cowardly thug grabbed Aryam by the throat, using her as a human shield to halt Jizen's rampage. Seeing her hostage, a dark memory triggered in the protagonist's mind. He saw a vision of a woman in a cap being held by a man, screaming for his help. Something inside him snapped. He walked toward them, radiating pure killing intent, ignoring the thug's warnings to stay back. Another fool tried to ambush him from behind, but with a blind elbow strike, Jizen knocked him out cold. He launched himself at the hostage taker. The thug, panicked, punched Aryam in the face to silence her screams. As she crumbled to the dust, Jizen did not stop. He descended upon the abuser with the fury of a demon, raining down blow after catastrophic blow. The gang leader finally stepped in, impressed enough to halt the slaughter. He tossed Jizen's phone back to him, declaring that he had earned the right to retrieve it. With a smirk, the boss extended an invitation for Jizen to join his crew, stating he was a man who couldn't stand not getting what he desired. But the beast wasn't pacified. Jizen rose, eyes void of humanity, and marched toward the leader. Fear flickered in the boss's eyes as he stammered, asking why Jizen looked at him like prey when the fight was supposed to be over. Jizen didn't give a damn about the words coming out of the guy's mouth. He launched a feral strike, aiming to end it instantly, but the boss shifted into a combat stance. With terrifying speed, he dodged the boy's punch, leaving Jizen wide-eyed in disbelief. The counterattack was brutal, a precision strike to the chin that sent Jizen flying backward. He crashed to the asphalt, his consciousness fading into the darkness. The boss stood over his fallen opponent, repeating his command to stop. Jizen lay there on the cold ground, unable to move or speak. Silence reigned. The gang leader looked down with cold eyes, telling him to consider the proposal carefully. He would return for an answer. With a dismissal of total dominance, he tossed the phone onto Jisen's chest and turned away. He signaled his crew to withdraw, and they fell in line instantly. As they descended the stairs, the chubby underling couldn't hide his curiosity. He asked who that bastard was, questioning if the boss really intended to recruit a punk who didn't speak, a punk whose eyes rolled back in such a terrifying way. The boss remained silent, his mind replaying the fight. He had dodged, yes, but Jisen's reaction speed was godlike. The boy had managed to graze him. That kid had a natural talent for exploiting the slightest opening. His combat potential was off the charts. The realization only deepened the leader's thirst to possess such a weapon for his crew. Meanwhile, back at the battleground, the aftermath continued. Jizen sat on the bench, completely drained of stamina after the intense duel. Ariam hovered nearby, her eyes filled with heartache for her crush. Suddenly, she turned and sprinted away on a mission. A moment later, Jisen's phone buzzed on the bench with incoming messages. It was a text from her saying she went to buy medicine and would return in a heartbeat. Guilt washed over him as he remembered the danger she had faced because of him. Overwhelmed by his thoughts, he abandoned the phone on the bench and walked into the shadows. The coward who had been hiding and watching the entire time was trembling. He knew if Jizen had fought one-on-one from the start, he would have annihilated them all. Finally, a true monster had transferred to his school. Creeping past the bench, he spotted the abandoned device and realized it was Jisen's. Seeing the notification pop up, the pieces clicked into place. Ariam had given this to him. Reading the private messages, the truth hit him like a truck she liked. Jizen. Then, he spotted the girl in the distance, rushing back with the medicine. Panic seized him. He had to make a choice. True to his cowardly nature, he snatched the phone and fled the scene. When Ariam arrived at the bench, breathless, she found only empty space. Unaware, the thief kept running until he was safely far away. As he caught his breath, the stolen phone vibrated again in his hand. Ariam texted that she had the medicine but missed him, asking desperately if his injuries were okay. Sunman was baffled by Jisen's cold heart. The girl was this worried. Yet Jizen hadn't even taken the phone. Sunman stood there, paralyzed by indecision. The girl kept texting, restating her name and class number, trying to bridge the gap. She thanked him for saving her and shyly asked if they could start talking gradually from now on. Sunman was going crazy. Should he reply? Should he ignore it? Or should he pretend to be the legendary Jizen just for a fleeting moment? Suddenly, a notification lit up the girl's phone. She gasped, startled by the reply. It was a simple, short yes. The next day, Sunman was showing the footage of Jizen fighting the entire gang to his friend. His friend's jaw dropped. That's the unlucky guy you talked about. He couldn't believe he was seeing such power with his own eyes. The friend claimed Jizen would be famous now, but Sunman was seething with jealousy. His crush, Ariam, seemed to have fallen for that violent jerk. And the worst part, Jizen was rejecting her, while Sunman didn't know what to do with his own feelings. While Sunman spiraled, his friend had a bright idea. If we post this on YouTube, we'll get millions of views. Snatching the phone, the friend bolted. Sunman chased after him, screaming for his device. In his haste, he slammed hard into another student. A tie clip clattered to the floor. Sunman quickly bowed, apologizing profusely. He looked up and froze. He had bumped into Kim Jin-woo, the second strongest fighter at Baekdong High. Recognition turned to terror. Sunman scrambled to pick up the fallen clip, his hand shaking uncontrollably. I'll fix it, he stammered, trying to reattach it. Suddenly, smack. A brutal slap echoed through the hall. Kim Jin-woo didn't even speak. He just struck him. The predator turned his back and walked away. His massive enforcer glared at Sunman, warning him to behave. Sunman's friend rushed over, asking if he was all right. Rage boiled in Sunman's chest as he blamed his friend for the hit. You're lucky it was just a slap, the friend whispered in awe. That guy's a legend. They're all crazy fighters here. But then, the friend pointed out something more important. Yana was approaching Jizen. asking about his face, which was covered in bandages. The protagonist's rising popularity irritated the scared boy. Ariam and Yenna were both completely smitten with him. Speaking of Ariam, she walked right past them. Sunman tried to charm her, but she didn't even glance his way, her eyes only searching for Jizen. The reality was bitter but clear. To get closer to the girl, he would have to exist in the shadow of the king. He had to get close to Jizen. While he schemed on how to approach the girl, his friend was lurking in the background, phone in hand. The footage of Jizen's brutal clash against the gang was already circulating online. Meanwhile, the tormentors were back at it, targeting the poor student whose dignity had been stripped away along with his hair. They had sketched a grotesque face on the back of his exposed neck, mocking him by claiming it was an improvement. Gagamin burned with shame, but his nightmare was far from over. One bully commanded him to walk backward, threatening violence if he disobeyed. Trembling, the boy complied. He stepped blindly into the unknown, guided only by their malicious laughter, until the solid ground beneath him suddenly vanished. Gravity took hold as he plummeted backward toward the unforgiving stairs. Just as his spine was about to shatter against the concrete, a strong hand snatched him from the air. Jizen had intervened. Yenna, standing beside the protagonist, rushed over to check on the trembling victim, but the moment her eyes landed on the ridiculous drawing on his neck, she snorted. Even as he explained his torment, she struggled to stifle her giggles, offering a breathless apology through her amusement. Jizen, however, remained stone-faced, finding no humor in bullying. Gagamin sent a silent prayer of gratitude to his savior. Elsewhere, the school gym had transformed into an underground arena. A frenzy of students encircled the center, roaring like spectators at a gladiator match. It was a spectacle of violence, with money changing hands as bets were placed on the brutal brawl. Kim Jin-woo watched with bored indifference until a subordinate shoved a phone in his face. It was the viral clip of Jizen's fight, the view count climbing higher with every passing second. Jin-woo narrowed his eyes, recognizing the uniform. The technique was flawless, but the camera distance made identification difficult. If a fighter of this caliber was truly walking their halls, it would change the entire power dynamic. He demanded to know if any transfers had arrived recently. A nervous student piped up, mentioning a quiet guy in class 5 who fit the description. Whispers suggested that Tae-soo had been hospitalized by this mystery student, though fear kept anyone from speaking the truth aloud. A twisted grin spread across Kim Jin-woo's face. The thought of someone taking down Tae-soo thrilled him. He ordered his minions to dig up everything on this interesting new target. At lunchtime, the bullies tried to corner Gagamin again, but he saw his chance. He latched onto Jizen as he left the classroom, holding up a loaf of bread and desperately asking to share a meal. The protagonist didn't accept, but he didn't refuse either, allowing the boy to tag along. When they arrived at the rooftop, however, unexpected guests were already waiting. Gagamin froze, unsure of the hierarchy here. One student claimed he was waiting for Jizen, while another chimed in that he was just part of the entourage. Sunman spotted the graffiti on the victim's neck and burst into laughter, calling him a natural comedian. But Gagamin's expression remained dark. This wasn't a joke. It was a brand of shame, a scar of school violence that couldn't be laughed away. You cannot simply hide from the truth. With a heavy heart, the boy asked Sunman to take a picture of his humiliated back, documenting the cruelty for reasons only he understood. Suddenly, Jizen's phone buzzed in his pocket. He stepped away from the group, checking the screen to find a text from Ariam, sweetly wishing him a good lunch. Misunderstanding the social cues, he replied with a simple, robotic well-wish in return. Yet, that single, dry text was enough to send the girl's heart racing on the other end. The peace was shattered when Jamin kicked the door open. He marched straight toward Jizen. He announced that he had heard the rumors about the quiet kid owning the rooftop and had come to verify the legend. He shoved his screen into Jizen's face, displaying the viral fight footage. Sunman went pale, realizing the consequences of uploading that video were about to crash down on them. While Gagamin stammered in confusion, the bully sneered, demanding a live demonstration. Jizen, however, didn't even grant him the dignity of eye contact. The disrespect was the spark that lit the fuse, rage boiling over. Jamin roared and launched a haymaker aimed straight at Jizen's jaw. Jizen slipped past the attack with the fluidity of water. The bully unleashed a flurry of strikes, but he was punching smoke. Every miss only fueled his humiliation. Desperate, Jamin threw one final reckless swing. Jizen simply sidestepped and drove a swift kick into his opponent's shin. The bully's balance crumbled, and gravity did the rest. He face-planted violently onto the wooden bench. A guttural scream tore from Jamin's throat. Blood gushed from his shattered nose, painting the wood crimson. Jizen stood over him, staring down with eyes devoid of pity, only cold disdain. In that moment, the bully felt it, an overwhelming, suffocating aura. Terror seized his heart, and he scrambled to his feet to flee for his life. As he vanished in the blink of an eye, the duo stood frozen in awe. Gagaman couldn't help but wonder, just what kind of monster was Jizen? Sunman dropped a bombshell. Jizen was the one who sent two to the emergency room. Hearing this, Gagaman looked at the protagonist with stars in his eyes. However, Sunman's expression darkened. That visit wasn't a blessing. It was a warning sign. That recruiter belonged to Kim Jin-woo's crew. They were predators who sniffed out talent, dragging strong fighters into the shadows, forcing them into brutal underground combat, and now their hungry gaze had landed squarely on Jizen. Rumor had it, volunteers could earn a fortune in the ring. A monster like Jizen, he would be a walking goldmine. Gagaman scoffed at the ridiculous idea. Since Jizen was the silent type, he decided to step up as his personal shield. He could tell just by looking. Jizen hated violence and avoided the spotlight at all costs. From this moment on, Gagaman declared himself the voice of Jizen. That is what true friends do, after all. Sunman looked skeptical, but Gagaman's delusion was unshakable. Later, as the afternoon classes began, Jizen's arrival triggered a shockwave through the room. Students swarmed him, shoving viral fight videos in his face. They begged for just one nod of confirmation. But Gagaman threw himself into the fray. He shouted for the mob to back off and give the man some space. If they wanted to talk to the legend, they had to go through his agent first. The crowd groaned, annoyed by this gatekeeper. Suddenly, the classroom door slammed open. A heavy silence fell as Kim Jin-woo strode in. He dominated the room, demanding to know who the new transfer was. Fear gripped the students, making them hesitate to sell Jizen out. But Gagaman's proximity gave it away. Jin-woo's cold eyes locked onto them, and he began his predatory approach. Gagaman didn't flinch. He stepped in front of Jizen, blocking the path of the alpha predator. Though trembling with fear, he claimed his title as Jizen's manager. A massive thug stepped forward, sneering at this insect who dared to speak. Smack! A heavy hand struck Gagaman across the face. The thug demanded to know if he had a death wish. Gagaman crumbled to the floor, exposing the back of his neck to his tormentors in total defeat. The brute hauled him up by the collar like a rag doll. He laughed, finding the weakling's bravery amusing. Sudden movement caught everyone's eye. Jizen stood up. Jin-woo smirked, asking if this was the nosebreaker he'd heard about. Met with stony silence, Jin-woo flicked a business card at him. It was an invitation to his gym, the den of wolves he controlled. His underling had failed to recruit him, so the boss had come to collect the prize himself. Still, Jizen's expression remained flat. Jin-woo switched tactics, dangling the promise of cold, hard cash. Bloodied but unbroken, Gagaman rose again. He screamed that Jizen was not a weapon for their games. Jin-woo's patience snapped. Bam! A ruthless kick to the chest sent Gagaman flying. He crashed into the desks, gasping for air. Jin-woo advanced on the fallen boy. He questioned why this insect insisted on getting crushed by meddling in affairs above his pay grade. He ordered him to know his place. Then he began to stomp on him without mercy. But as the boot came down, a hand clamped onto Jin-woo's shoulder. Jizen had made his move. Their eyes locked in a silent clash of wills. Jin-woo hissed, warning him to let go or face the consequences of touching him. Instead of letting go, Jizen's grip tightened like a vice. Shock flashed across Jin-woo's face. Seeing his boss disrespected, the massive thug roared. He charged forward to crush the insolent brat. Jizen flowed like water, dodging the heavy blow. Crack. A devastating knee strike shattered the thug's face. Blood sprayed as the giant collapsed into the furniture. But the beast wasn't finished yet. Adrenaline fueling his rage, he scrambled for a weapon. He hurled a heavy chair with lethal intent, but Jizen was already gone, leaping into the air with supernatural grace. He landed on a desk, using it as a launch pad. In a blur of motion, he delivered a flying kick. The thug hit the floor, knocked out cold instantly. Jizen stood atop the wreckage. An invisible aura of dominance radiated from him. The whisper ceased. The class stared in horror and awe. The legends were true. Unbelievably, the thug rose again, eyes rolling with madness. He lifted an entire desk over his head, screaming for murder. What is going on here? The teacher's voice cut through the chaos. He ordered the brute to drop the desk immediately. The teacher demanded to know why Jizen was perched like a gargoyle. Jinwoo stepped in smoothly, claiming it was just harmless horseplay. He shot a glance at Gagaman. I'll be in touch, Agent. The threat hung heavy in the air. Walking out, he tapped the teacher's shoulder condescendingly. Carry on with your lesson, teach. He owned the school, and everyone knew it. The adrenaline faded as the bell rang. After class, Gagaman recounted the epic showdown to Sunman. It felt like a scene straight out of a blockbuster movie. No one could even lay a finger on Jizen. The students lamented, regretting they hadn't witnessed the legendary spectacle with their own eyes. Inside the office, the tension lingered. Music. He asked why Jizen remained behind, only to learn the teacher had requested his presence. Even though he didn't throw the first punch, and violence inside school grounds is a grave offense, trouble was inevitable. While the air hung heavy with uncertainty, the teacher slid a cup of green tea across the desk. A bitter, mature flavor, hardly something a teenager would choose. He spoke softly to the boy. The atmosphere here is a far cry from your old school. Even his father had hesitated, fearing the rough environment would be too harsh for him. Music. He had opposed the transfer and convinced Jizen would struggle to adapt, especially since he had sealed his voice away. Yet, beneath the worry lay gratitude, a father trusting an old friend to guide his son through the darkness. The memories flowed back. The teacher recalled their last meeting, 4 years ago. Jizen was just an elementary student then. But even back then, he was a prodigy. The teacher remembered the training incredible movements overflowing with raw, explosive energy. His father had introduced him with such pride, presenting a warrior in the making. Jizen had greeted him respectfully. The teacher recalled the shock of seeing their home, an entire wing transformed into a brutal gym for the boy. That night, the adults had celebrated their reunion with heavy drinks and high hopes. You were brilliant back then, the teacher mused, full of life. He couldn't fathom what tragedy had occurred to drag such a bright soul into this miserable abyss. He sighed, asking for understanding. I can protect you from the faculty, but the students, that is a battle you must fight alone. Your father didn't raise a weapon just for physical strength. He forged you to survive a cruel world. Someday, he promised, you will break that silence. Outside, the heavens opened up, drenching the city in a sudden, violent downpour. Elsewhere, Sunman panicked. He warned his friend to fear Kim Jinwoo, convinced that attracting Jizen was a hopeless endeavor. Suddenly, the stolen phone buzzed. A message from Eri. Do you have an umbrella? Confused and flustered, he replied, asking why. She was waiting at the stationery store and demanded he come. He rushed over, hope blooming in his chest. Surely she had an umbrella for him, but seeing her standing there only confirmed a painful truth. She wasn't waiting for him. She was waiting for Jizen. Jealousy gnawed at him. Should he bring Jizen? The thought of them sharing a small umbrella, shoulders touching, and it drove him mad. A devious plan sparked in his mind. Grinning, he sprinted off to find Jizen and change the narrative. Eri waited patiently in the rain. Finally, footsteps approached. Sunman arrived, dragging Jizen along while chattering endlessly. Sunman played the fool perfectly. Oh no, we're stuck without cover. He feigned surprise at seeing her, acting as if it were pure coincidence. Ori ignored the theatrics and reached into her bag. She began searching for something important. She pulled out a spare umbrella and offered it directly to Jizen. Music. Sunman's heart sank. His scheme was crumbling before his eyes. The umbrella passed between them. Her eyes and heart were locked on Jizen. Sunman desperately wished, just for a second, that she would look at him that way. Swallowing his pride, he intercepted the umbrella. Thanks for the kindness. He quickly lied, claiming he and Jizen had a destination. There's a new arcade on Main Street. We're going to check it out. You should come with us, he invited, trying to regain control. Meanwhile, Gaga was sprinting through the storm to escape the rain. But in a dark alley, his path was blocked. It was Jamin, nursing a broken nose, and the chubby thug Jizen had humiliated earlier. Terror froze Gaga's blood. Music. What do you guys want? He stammered. Jamin grinned viciously. Since you claim to be his manager, deliver a message. They descended on him like wolves, using his body to send a warning to Jizen. Jamin loomed over the battered boy. Tell him we aren't finished. He forced Gaga to repeat the demand. Make Jizen join the fight. Music. A brutal kick silenced his hesitation. Answer me properly when I speak to you. Tears mixed with rain and blood. I'll tell him I promise I'll speak to Jizen. Music. Do you know the penalty for refusal? The thug sneered. It's death. Suddenly, a shadow emerged. Kim Jin-woo stepped in, ordering them to ease off. He tossed a sleek business card onto the boy's trembling chest. Tell Jizen he is cordially invited to the combat kennel. They vanished into the rain, leaving a broken messenger behind. Meanwhile, oblivious to the violence, Sunman was at the arcade. He was mashing buttons alongside our protagonist. One was playing with manic excitement. The other stood with eyes dead and uninterested. Sunman unleashed his ultimate skills. He was desperate to impress Eri, to show he was the alpha. He thought he was the king of the game, but casually, effortlessly, Jizen scored a critical hit against him. Sunman panicked, sweating bullets, trying to look composed. He played with desperate fury, thirsting for victory, but Jizen, he dominated the game as if he were breathing, landing yet another perfect combo. The boy stared in shock at his friend's terrifying skills. With overflowing confidence, Sunman declared that the real game started now, vowing not to rest until he crushed him. But the match ended with a brutal score of 13-0. Jizen didn't show an ounce of mercy. He invited Ari to play next, coldly calculating that if he destroyed her in the game, she would be disgusted by his ruthless nature. The match began, not as a battle, but as a shy exchange of subtle touches. The pace was agonizingly slow, until Ari landed her first strike. Sunman watched in fury, demanding to know where the merciless gaming god from before had vanished to. Meanwhile, the girl, eyes burning with dedication, secured yet another point against her crush. Desperate for redemption, they moved to the claw machines. Sunman boasted he would clear it easily, but after failing time and again, he begged Ari to wait, swearing victory was close. He tried once more and failed miserably. Rage exploded within him. He screamed that the machine was rigged. But beside him, Jizen moved with calm precision. In seconds, he held two identical bears. With a stoic face, he handed one to Ari and the other to his defeated friend. Humiliated, Sunman accepted the gift, wondering if there was anything this monster couldn't do. Frustrated by his continuous failures, Sunman played his final trump card. He dragged them to a karaoke room, trusting his vocals to finally impress the girl. He put on a legendary performance, but not of singing. It was a comedy show. Ari didn't even look at him. She was clinging tightly to the teddy bear she won from Jizen. While Sunman screamed like a madman, he choked on his own tongue and had to flee the room to find water. Silence descended upon the room, leaving the two alone. Ari shyly texted Jizen, thanking him for the gift. But suddenly, her phone rang. The moment she saw her father's name on the screen, pure terror filled her eyes. She bolted from the room, in a panic, but in her haste, she slammed into a stranger, sending his hot coffee flying everywhere. The man roared in anger, demanding she watch where she was going. Paralyzed by fear, she couldn't speak, which only fueled his rage. Sunman returned to find a nightmare unfolding. Is this your girl? The thug sneered. Sunman stuttered that they were just classmates. Disgusted, the man poured the scalding coffee dregs directly onto the girl's head. As expected, the coward froze. But then a hand of steel clamped onto the thug's wrist. Jizen had arrived. What the hell do you think you're doing? The man growled. Our protagonist didn't waste words. He swept the man's legs, slamming him into the concrete like a sack of garbage. The thug's lackey tried to ambush him, but Jizen silenced him with a single devastating punch. Ari watched in awe as her tormentors fell. Jizen seized her arm, pulling her up, and they vanished into the night to escape the fallout. Sunman was left alone with the groaning thugs. You with them, the man growled. No. Sunman shrieked, fleeing the scene to save his own skin. Clutching his backpack and the teddy bear, he scrambled to the street. Below, on the stairs, he saw Jizen and Ari running together. He screamed their names, desperate to be acknowledged, but they didn't look back. They simply continued their escape, leaving him in the shadows. A painful truth hit him. They looked perfect together. Jizen was the hero who saved the damsel in distress. And Sunman, he realized he was nothing but a cowardly loser. To her, he was just a background NPC. Defeated, he dragged himself home, drowning in self-loathing. Suddenly, a groan stopped him. It was Gagaman, lying battered and bruised in the corner. Sunman rushed to him. "What happened?" he gasped. Tears streamed down the boy's swollen face. "I'm not qualified," he sobbed. "I can't be Jizen's voice." Sunman asked if Jim Woo's gang had done this. Gagaman confessed. He had promised to force Jizen into the dogfight, all because he was too terrified to say no. Sunman looked at him and saw his own reflection. This was the pathetic fate of cowards. He hoisted the broken boy up, helping him toward home. "What do we do now?" Gagaman whimpered. Sunman's eyes hardened. "If Jizen truly considers us friends, he will save us." Meanwhile, the atmosphere shifted. Jizen and Ari reached a quiet spot. Slowly, he released her arm, and they walked side by side. She opened an umbrella, shielding them both from the cold downpour, creating a small world just for the two of them. Nearby, Yenna froze in her tracks. She saw them walking shoulder to shoulder, and her heart stopped. Her friend asked if something was wrong. "It's nothing," Yenna lied, masking her turmoil. Her group urged her to move, and she walked away, casting one last longing look at the couple fading into the rain. Ari's phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications, but she silenced the world to focus on this moment. They arrived at the building where she lived. She stopped and typed a message on her screen. "This is my home." Gently, she handed him the umbrella and turned to leave. She skipped away, heart fluttering from the magical encounter. As Jizen turned to leave, he felt a phantom tap on his shoulder. He checked his phone and found a new message. "Thank you so much for today." REM clutched her phone, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She dashed back toward the safety of her house. Riding the elevator up, her gaze drifted downward, watching Jizen's figure fade into the distance. But suddenly snap, the sharp sound of a lighter igniting shattered the silence. Her eyes darted to the side. A man stood there, wreathed in smoke, staring her down. His voice dripped with disdain as he asked what kind of pathetic nonsense she was up to. REM said nothing, merely bowing her head in submission. The scene shifts. The next day, the school hallways were filled with tension. The bullies cornered Gagamin, their words cutting like knives. They cursed him for betraying Jizen, while the poor boy could only lament his choices, convincing himself he deserved death. Blow after blow rained down on him. They humiliated him, trying to wring every drop of guilt from his soul to manipulate Jizen through pity. The leader demanded an answer. When would Jizen step into the ring? The deadline was set. Saturday night, 9 o'clock sharp. The location, the school gym. The ultimatum was clear: if Jizen failed to appear, Gagamin would be slaughtered by the gang. Desperate, the duo tried to explain the gravity of the situation to the protagonist, pleading for his strength, but Jizen simply turned his back. Walking away without a word, they were left trembling in uncertainty. Gagamin felt his world crumbling, convinced that everything was truly ruined. Saturday night arrived. The fight club came alive. Competitors clashed with savage ferocity. Attacking with earth-shattering force, every bone-crushing impact sent waves of adrenaline through the cheering crowd. The two friends watched in terror, unable to comprehend that such violence was happening inside a sacred school. Their minds raced. Would Jizen actually come? The atmosphere was electric, bordering on madness. Everyone was losing their minds over the brutality unfolding before them. It was a symphony of violence, a raw, genuine exchange of fists between the combatants. The crowd roared like beasts with every opening. They screamed for blood, urging the fighters to strike. The gladiator took the hint, landing heavy blows to the rhythm of the audience's frenzy. High above, through the cold lens of a camera, a man watched from the VIP section like a king on his throne. The undercard matches concluded. It was finally time for the main event. He wondered if Jizen would show his face. To the untrained eye, the boy looked calm and kind, but deep down, he was a born fighter. The man hesitated on the bet. Should he back Lee Tae-sung or Jizen? He was intrigued by the transfer student's hidden potential, but logic dictated he bet on Tae-sung. That man was a true hunting dog, bred for the kill. Suddenly, the phone rang. A report came in from the gate. A student had arrived. But the newcomer remained silent, ignoring every question. The teacher grinned. He knew exactly who it was. Let him in, he commanded. Peering through the window, he watched the boy approach. He had to admit, the kid had guts. The courage to walk willingly into the slaughterhouse like a sacrificial lamb. In the ring, the current bout ended with Min Chul standing victorious. Kim Jin-woo grew impatient. The main event was seconds away. Where was Jizen? His lackeys pressured the terrified boys. If Jizen didn't appear this instant, they would be the ones fed to the wolf. Tae-sung. Suddenly, the heavy gym doors creaked open. Silence fell. All eyes snapped to the entrance to see who had dared to arrive. Standing there, bathed in shadows, was the transfer student. Jizen. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Even his friends were paralyzed with shock before rushing to congratulate the boy for coming to save their lives. Kim Jin-woo sneered. The boy had arrived just in time, slipping in like a ghost. He had been waiting for this moment. The stakes were astronomical. If the boy won, the payout would be legendary, as only 10% of the crowd had dared to bet on him. The teacher revealed his own wager. In his eyes, Jizen wasn't prey. He was a bastard starving for a hunt. Show me everything you've got, he whispered. The two fighters of the main event stepped into the center. They faced off, staring into each other's souls, analyzing every micro movement. Jizen slowly removed his headphones as the opponent asked if he was the transfer student. He tossed the headset to someone in the crowd, commanding them to play his track. Shirt off, muscles rippling. It's showtime, he declared. The bell rang. They positioned themselves and clashed. Blows flew, but Jizen was like water, effortlessly dodging every strike. Bam! He returned fire with a sharp punch, forcing the opponent to defend. They danced on the razor's edge, testing each other's skills and limits. Punches and kicks flew, but only Tae-sung was taking the damage. After a mere few exchanges, Tae-sung realized the terrifying truth of all the monsters he had faced. Jizen's level was in a different dimension. A chill ran down his spine. Today was going to be a nightmare, but he refused to be intimidated. Just as that thought formed, a fist smashed into his face. Jizen seized the split-second opening when Tae-sung's guard faltered. The protagonist didn't hesitate. He unleashed a torrent of strikes, a barrage so relentless his opponent couldn't even breathe, let alone counterattack. His two friends roared in triumph with every hit. He landed. Tae-sung's rage boiled over. How could this boy's expression remain so cold? He was being treated like a mere punching bag for Jizen. Watching the screens, the teacher frowned. What was wrong with the fighter he had bet on? The crowd grew restless, their bloodlust unsatisfied as Lee Tae-sung failed to attack. Turn up the volume, they screamed, hoping the music would wake the beast. Like a chorus, they started chanting the boy's name. The thumping bass and the roar of the crowd began to stir something dark within him. Motivation surged through his veins. Meanwhile, Jizen paused, the melody drifting through the air, feeling painfully familiar. That split second of distraction cost him dearly as the first heavy blows landed, waking the bloodthirsty audience who clamored to identify the song. A bystander shouted over the noise, identifying the track as the latest hit from Ian, the girl group taking the nation by storm. The music became a time machine. Jizen was transported back to a memory of a girl, her voice teasing him that once she debuted, he would carry the title of a pop star's boyfriend. In that bittersweet past, she had asked for his opinion, her eyes wide with hope and fear. The producers had promised her a guaranteed debut, but there was a catch. She had to remain strictly within the contract's terms. She was desperate to know if she could make her dreams reality. Just as his friends called him to hang out, he looked at her and lied, telling her the choice didn't matter to him. He believed that letting her go was the only right answer. Her face lit up with relief, and she thanked him, unaware of the sacrifice he was making. She called him her rock, her only sanctuary in a chaotic world. Suddenly, the roar of the crowd snapped Jizen back to the violent present. But the damage was done. His focus shattered. He began eating a barrage of vicious strikes, unable to defend himself. His friends watched in horror, confused by his sudden freeze. Across the ring, Taeyong smirked, deciding that Jizen was nothing special, just a coward who had been overly cautious before. Taeyong's confidence skyrocketed. The crowd chanted his name like a war cry, while the love song blasting from the speakers slowly unraveled Jizen's composure. He was being driven back, inch by inch. His friends stood helpless, watching him get dismantled. Finally, they realized the trigger. It was the music. Desperate to save him, they rushed to the booth to demand silence. The DJ told them to get lost, while other spectators mocked them, laughing that Jizen couldn't focus just because of a little background noise. They sneered, claiming the quiet kid was simply too weak to survive in this brutal world. Yagaman didn't hesitate. He snatched the speaker and bolted. The crew chased him, but amidst the chaos, Jizen's friend managed to cut the power to the music. Silence fell, but inside the protagonist's mind, the memories only screamed louder. He relived the moment she broke his heart. She told him she was done, so that she couldn't be dragged down by him anymore, and that they were strangers from this day forward. She claimed she was sick of it all. She turned her back on their history and walked away, leaving him screaming her name into the void. He had called out to her with desperate lungs until security dragged him away. Lost in that nightmare, he barely felt Taeyong continuing to pummel his physical body. The fight was all but over. Taeyong needed just one more clean hit to finish the job. He landed a few more strikes, and Jizen crumbled to his knees, his body failing while the image of the girl burned in his mind. Taeyong winded up for the executioner's kick to end it all. The crowd held its breath, expecting the knockout, but as the foot came flying, Jizen's instincts flared. He dodged. It was as if a switch had been flipped in his soul. Ancient rage flooded his veins, re-energizing his broken body. He launched himself at his opponent with the force of a freight train, landing a devastating punch that pinned Taeyong to the floor. The audience gasped, stunned by this explosion of absurd strength. Jizen didn't stop. He kicked his opponent's face, drawing blood and leaving his rival terrified, unable to comprehend this sudden demon. Watching from the shadows, Kim Jin-woo smiled. He knew the outcome was already sealed. The few cheering for Jizen erupted in triumph, while the rest of the hall fell into a stunned silence. Taeyong was completely lost. Seconds ago, he was the king of the ring, but now he was being ragdolled as if he were nothing more than trash. A terrifying, murderous aura began to radiate from the boy. On the ground, his opponent begged for mercy, but the protagonist was deaf to his pleas. He kicked him again and again, a relentless rhythm of violence. The crowd began to murmur in fear. He wasn't just fighting, he was going to kill the guy. Jizen was possessed by pure, unadulterated wrath. People turned to Kim Jin-woo, asking if he should step in before it turned into a murder scene, but the boss looked delighted. He didn't see a crime. He saw a box office sensation. He was already plotting who to feed to this beast next to create an even bloodier spectacle. Finally, his friends rushed into the ring to intervene. They held him back, shouting that he had already won. The opposing teacher was furious, watching his star pupil get destroyed like an amateur. But to the promoter, only money mattered. He saw the potential in Jizen, a weapon that could bring in a fortune if pointed in the right direction. All he needed to do was break him in. He would turn this boy into his loyal, vicious hunting dog. Jizen slowly returned to his senses. Looking down at his unconscious opponent, Kim Jin-woo approached, congratulating him and validating his own sharp eye for talent. He leaned in, whispering for the boy to bring that same psychotic intensity to the next match. The prize money would be sent through his agent. The boss walked away, leaving the two boys to trail behind Jizen. His friends tried to act cheerful, suggesting a celebration party, but Jizen slapped Gagaman's hand away cold. He walked off alone, leaving them confused by his icy demeanor. Further down the street, passing a storefront window, a familiar sound stopped him cold. He looked up to see the idol group, Allison, playing on the large display screen. The interviewer asked the star about her skyrocketing popularity. She smiled her practiced smile, thanking her fans for loving her even through her moments of weakness. Sungmin and Gangmin trailed behind the boy like shadows, burning with curiosity about why he had frozen in his tracks to watch the broadcast about Alkin. Then it clicked. Jizen had been acting erratic ever since that melody first reached his ears. They assumed he despised the singer, unable to fathom that anyone could hate such an angel, yet his reaction suggested a storm was brewing. Sungmin was floored to discover that Gangmin was actually a closet fan of the idol. He tried to brush the boy off, claiming he expected as much, but then dropped a bombshell. He was a fan of the band too. Sometime later, Jizen arrived at the coastline, with the two boys still stalking him from a safe distance. The protagonist settled onto a bench, his gaze lost in the endless horizon. Gangmin asked if they should intervene, but his friend signaled that it was a terrible idea. The boy insisted, arguing that if they were truly friends, they couldn't just stand by and watch him drown in silence. Sungmin revealed he had a secret weapon, someone who could heal Jizen's heart, and he wrestled with the decision to pull that trigger. Meanwhile, in the dead of night, Ariam's phone began to buzz, shattering the silence. Her eyes flew open, a message from Jizen. He was summoning her to the beach by the lighthouse. She scrambled to dress, desperate to slip away unseen. She crept past the living room, where her father lay slumped over the table, passed out from yet another night of heavy drinking. Suddenly, the man began screaming curses at the air. Terror gripped her heart, but it was only a nightmare. He collapsed back into his drunken stupor a moment later. She managed to escape that suffocating house to meet her crush. Back at the beach, Gangmin demanded to know who Sungmin had contacted, and the answer was a girl. His friend was flabbergasted to learn he was messaging girls. Sungmin began to explain the complicated web of lies he had spun. Ariam had no idea it was him behind the screen. It was the spare phone she gave to Jizen, intended as a direct line to his heart. But when Sungmin took possession of the device, he couldn't resist. He had replied to her desperate texts, pretending to be the protagonist. Deep down, his conscience screamed at him to return it, yet he couldn't let go. Gangmin placed a heavy hand on his shoulder and asked the fatal question, "Do you like her?" Sungmin admitted he used to hold feelings for her, but he knew his place in this story. His friend gave him a firm shove, urging him to fix this before it was too late. Stealing his resolve, the boy approached Jizen, who remained statuesque on the bench, and surrendered the phone to its rightful owner. He apologized profusely for impersonating him and confessed to sending one final text begging Jizen not to reject Ariam's heart. As he walked away, he muttered that the two of them looked perfect together. Jizen glanced at the screen and saw a new notification. She was almost there, and for the first time in forever, a tremor of nervousness shook his composure. Then, she appeared. Ariam ran toward her beloved from their hiding spot. Gangmin was struck speechless by her ethereal beauty, while Gangmin marveled at how well they matched. Sungmin silently mourned the loss of the girl of his dreams. Gangmin sensed the mood and said it was getting late. He dragged Sungmin away to play video games, leaving the lovebirds to their private world. A heavy silence descended upon the beach. Only the rhythm of the crashing waves filled the void. Ariam broke the ice digitally, typing that she was shocked to receive his summons and was anxiously awaiting his reply. He texted back, admitting she was on his mind. She tried to make small talk about the soothing sound of the ocean, but he only replied with a single, cryptic emoji. The girl asked if this was a regular haunt for him, and he admitted it was his first time visiting this place. Jizen asked when she usually drifted off to sleep. Ariam replied 10 p.m. In fact, she was already dreaming when his message pulled her back to reality. He stood up, offering to walk her home, but she panicked, clinging to his arm and pleading that she didn't want to return to that house. He didn't argue. He didn't question. He simply accepted her wish and walked to a vending machine to buy them drinks. She thanked him softly for his kindness. When asked why she refused to leave, she confessed her home felt more like a prison cell than a sanctuary. She opened up further, admitting how stunned she was to receive his text today, especially considering their last interaction. Before this, he had only sent a simple good night, a gesture that had caught her completely off guard at the time. Some music. Jizen scrolled up. There it was, a gentle good night, sent yesterday by Sungmin. Jizen chose to remain silent, carrying the weight of a kindness he hadn't performed. The girl continued, her voice trembling. She had been drowning in despair that day, feeling like the world was collapsing. But that single message felt like a lifeline, a whisper encouraging her to endure. She was overwhelmingly grateful and finally gathered the courage to ask him something. She asked why he had gone silent. He searched for an answer, but his mind drifted into the dark waters of his past. Memories of his ex-girlfriend surfaced, a time when security guards blocked his path. threatening to arrest him while she seemed to abandon him. But then, the memory shifted. The girl had run back to him, embracing him with desperate, bone-crushing strength. Music. She confessed she had rehearsed their breakup 1,000 times, trying to freeze her heart to be as cold as ice. But seeing his face shattered her resolve. She couldn't leave him even if it meant destroying her own future. She asked Jizen what path she should take. He had looked her in the eyes and sworn that no matter what chaos ensued, he would be her shield. He told her to wipe her tears. For as long as he was there, everything would be all right. High above the chaos, watching them like a silent predator, stood God Bangan, the CEO of Bangan Entertainment. Snap back to reality. Jizen turned to Ariam, his voice low. He told her that words hold power, enough to pierce the soul and freeze time itself. A shadow crossed her face. She fell into deep thought, whispering that his perspective was unexpectedly philosophical. She confessed she couldn't read him at all, but she knew one thing: his silence carried a weight far heavier than hers. The boy simply asked why she had chosen to stay silent. Her answer was calm, yet tragic. It was simple. Her words were tainted with venom, an inheritance of filth from her father. She realized the darkness in her father's voice lived within her too. A foolish reason to hide, she admitted. Sensing her mood, Jizen invited her to walk along the coast to clear their minds. But peace is a luxury on a Saturday night. The streets were teeming with life. As they passed a local bar, the air grew heavy with the tension of a brewing storm. Inside, a pack of hyenas was cornering a lone prey. A group of thugs harassed a younger boy for daring to drink in their territory. The boy didn't flinch. With arrogant confidence, he claimed his maturity surpassed his age. His audacity only fueled the gang's blazing rage. Music. It was Jong Jaai, the chaotic leader of the gang trying to recruit Jizen. He claimed he only sought a moment of peace and a drink. One thug sneered, asking where Dial's lackeys were hiding. Why would a boss walk alone in the lion's den? The boy smirked. He preferred to let his subordinates rest during the holidays. A lone wolf finds life easier without the pack slowing him down. The thug's patience snapped. He ordered him to vanish, threatening that defiance would be paid for in blood. Dial laughed in their faces. He mocked them, asking if the veterans of Diohai had bullied them into such hatred. He called them petty souls, trapped by their own inferiority. That was the spark. One thug flipped the table in a blind rage, screaming he was itching for violence. And chaos erupted as he kicked the furniture toward the four men. Dial stood his ground, his aura shifting. He declared that fear of pain was something he had never known. The atmosphere shattered. Everyone froze as the brawl began. Music. 1 versus 4, a symphony of destruction commenced. Jong Jaai moved like he was playing with children. But mid-strike, his eyes locked onto a familiar sight. Jizen's signature blue hair stood out in the crowd. A wide grin split his face. What a pleasure. He shouted that he was thrilled to see his friend, claiming he was just planning a visit, yet fate had intervened. He ignored the fight to embrace the confused boy. He hugged Jizen tight, declaring this meeting was nothing short of destiny. The thugs chased him down, demanding to know if Jizen was part of the same crew. DL scoffed, asking if their eyes were just for decoration. He proudly proclaimed their friendship. But the thugs didn't care about bonds or brotherhood. They only saw fresh targets. Instinct took over. Jizen shoved Ariam behind him, shielding her from the storm. The gang attacked with killing intent, swearing to slaughter them all. While the gang leader crushed one attacker, another thug rushed Jizen. He screamed that friends should share the same pain, but they underestimated the protagonist. Jizen dismantled the bully with terrifying ease. The duo fought back to back against the swarm. They covered each other's blind spots, a perfect harmony of violence. In seconds, bodies hit the floor. Ariam watched, stunned. She had believed Jizen sat atop an unreachable wall, isolated from the world. But now she saw him descend into the mud just to save someone. He seemed cold as ice, but the truth was different. Music. Well, he wasn't cold at all. Most people fight for selfish desires, driven by greed. But Jizen was an anomaly. He fought for something greater than his own will. He fought out of sheer desperation. Suddenly, a coward made his move. One thug pulled a knife, creeping up behind the boy like a snake. He closed the distance, blade ready to strike the unaware hero. Ariam screamed in pure terror, trying to warn him, music, but his fighting partner was faster. shouting for him to duck. Jizen reacted instantly, dodging the lethal blow. In the same heartbeat, the gang leader soared through the air, delivering a flying kick to the attacker's face. He spat on the ground, cursing the man. The audacity to pull steel against two unarmed opponents was a disgrace to the street code. Trash without skill always resort to weapons when cornered. With renewed fury, they knocked out every last fool who dared to stand. Breathing hard, the boy grinned at Jizen. He asked if they didn't make a magnificent team, having cleared the trash so effortlessly. Jizen ignored him. Turning to Aryam, her eyes were swimming in tears. Kong DL asked if she was scared, dismissing the violence as nothing special. Bam! The protagonist silenced him with a brutal punch to the face. Confusion washed over the gang leader as he asked what the hell that was for. Jizen didn't speak. He delivered a second crushing blow to the stomach. Dial collapsed, gasping that he only staged this drama to see Jizen fight seriously. The protagonist raised his fist to finish it, but the boy threw his hands up in surrender. He refused to fight back, claiming they were allies in this moment. He apologized for the method, but the results were undeniable. It was a test, and Jizen had passed with legendary colors. He extended an offer, music. He begged Jizen to join his gang as a brother, but Jizen simply turned his coal back, walking away with Aryam. With the persistent shadow followed them. He teased that the two had gotten quite cozy. To be together this late at night, he smirked, satisfied that his chaos had played matchmaker for the couple. He insisted he owed Jizen a debt for the help back there. He offered to guide them to a sanctuary to rest, rather than wandering the streets aimlessly. The two hesitated, but with no other choice. They followed him into the night. Music. Doyle guided them into his sanctuary, a hidden comic book library where time seemed to stand still. He called out to the owner, who was passed out cold, to wake up and serve the new guests. The man was in a coma-like slumber, completely lost to the world and unaware of the hours ticking by. Groggily, he muttered that he had never seen these fresh faces before, but Doyle grinned, introducing them as his new crew. The attendant chuckled, noting that Doyle's taste in company had improved since he usually hung out with thugs, not visual kings and queens. He told them to grab any spot they liked. Thanks to the empty house, they had all the time in the world. But while Jizen was signing them in at this peaceful hideout, a storm was brewing back at Aryam's home as her father awoke from his deep sleep. Music. As consciousness returned to him, he noticed the front door was ajar, a chilling sign that something was wrong. He stormed into his daughter's room only to find an empty bed. Panic began to rise as he tore through every room, hunting for her presence. When the realization hit that she was truly gone, his desperation morphed into a terrifying rage. Back at the cafe, Doyle revealed the truth. This was his secret base, a fortress of solitude where he escaped reality. He was granting them VIP access, a privilege he gave to no one else. He asked if this settled his debt with Jizen, telling them to lose themselves in the world of Manhwa. He waved goodbye, announcing he needed to recharge his batteries. He collapsed into a corner beanbag and instantly drifted off. A comfortable silence descended upon the remaining two. Music. Jizen pulled out his phone, breaking the quiet to ask if she was still afraid. Aryam shook her head, a soft calmness in her voice. She asked if he wanted to dive into a story with her. He nodded, and they selected a series to binge. As they turned the pages, the air grew thick with a heart-fluttering tension and shy glances. They immersed themselves in the fictional worlds for hours, until the attendant returned, breaking the spell with complimentary drinks on the house. He looked at them with genuine curiosity, surprised that a lone wolf like Doyle had managed to make decent friends. The truth was, Doyle didn't have real companions, only delinquents and street fighters who looked for trouble from dawn to dusk. As he handed over the cans, Jizen and Aryam froze. They noticed the man's hand he was missing 2 fingers, a permanent scar of a violent past. Seeing their shock, he smiled bitterly. He explained he was used to the phantom pain now, though the initial loss had been a nightmare. Doyle, however, still couldn't forgive himself for what happened to those fingers. It was the tragic tale of an ordinary child who had strayed from the light and fallen into the darkness of the streets. He apologized for rambling on their first visit, but his eyes were serious as he asked them a favor. Please take care of Doyle. To him, That troublemaker was a precious junior who needed saving. Time melted away. REM, exhausted, had fallen asleep, her head resting gently on Jizen's shoulder. It was a perfect moment until her phone began to scream. She jolted awake, heart pounding, and flushed a deep crimson when she realized how close she had been to Jizen. Music. The screen displayed 3 missed calls. Dread washed over her. She quickly texted Jizen that the caller was her father and that she had to return to her cage immediately. Jizen refused to let her go alone and insisted on walking her back. Together, they stepped out into the beautiful yet suffocating night. They reached the towering apartment complex where she lived. As they stood by the elevator, she turned to him, thanking him for the few hours of freedom that felt like a lifetime. Jizen looked confused by her heavy words, watching as she walked toward her doom. The moment she punched in the code and the door clicked open, her father was there, an exploding volcano of fury. His voice thunderous, he demanded to know if she had lost her mind, screaming about the time and his unanswered calls. Seeing the defiance in her eyes only fueled his wrath. He struck her. A vicious slap echoed through the hall as he cursed her for daring to look at him with those eyes. As the girl collapsed to the floor, he loomed over her, questioning if she had any respect left for the man who raised her, roughly grabbing her to drag her inside. He roared, asking how she dared to leave without permission and demanding to know what filthy things she had been doing. His voice rose to a deafening crescendo, terrorizing the girl as he demanded answers she couldn't give. Jizen, witnessing this brutality, felt his blood boil. He stepped forward, but the father locked eyes with him, convinced this boy was the corruptor who stole his daughter. He vowed Jizen wouldn't leave alive. Desperate, REM grabbed her father's shirt with both hands, using all her strength to hold him back. Her father screamed for her to let go, but she looked at Jizen, tears streaming down her face. She begged him to run, even as another slap struck her cheek. Music. The old man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He swore he would kill the boy right then and there. REM endured the blows, clinging to her father like a human shield. She screamed at Jizen, her voice breaking, telling him to just disappear and save himself. Hearing her desperate plea, his survival instinct kicked in. He turned and ran. The protagonist realized with a sinking heart that he was an expert at running away, just like he had fled to this city years ago. He had never been able to face the darkness head on. As he fled like a coward, the sounds of the father beating the girl echoed behind him. Jizen used her sacrifice as his chance to escape. This was who he was. A person who runs when the fight gets too real. He pretended nothing happened, closing his eyes to the silence and darkness, trying to hide from his own shame. Far away from that house of horrors, he walked through the streets, physically exhausted and spiritually broken. Finally, he arrived at his own sanctuary. Inside, an old man was kneeling before the Buddha, deep in silent prayer. Music. Jizen collapsed to his knees at the entrance. The old man, sensing his presence, noted that he had returned home late. It was the first time the boy had ever broken curfew. The old man observed that Jizen carried a heavy burden on his mind. Music. This neighborhood, chosen for its silence, was the perfect place for a coward to hide. Even in this darkness, he had somehow forged bonds that shimmered with a fragile light. But time was running out. He stood at the crossroads of destiny. Would he embrace this chaotic life, or flee into the shadows once more? Days drifted by in the wake of that incident. Yet, the violence within the school walls never slept. The Fight Club was not a sport. It was an arena of pure, unadulterated savagery. Victors only ceased their assault when their victims begged for mercy. A twisted display where bullies paraded as warriors by crushing the weak. Kim Jin-woo watched a boy surrender and rage flared in his eyes. He demanded to know why the coward had even stepped into the ring only to quit so soon. The beaten student trembled, confessing that with zero chance of victory, he saw no logic in continuing a battle destined for defeat. A brutal kick to the face silenced him. Kim Jin-woo spat that such a pathetic mindset had no place in his ring. Weaklings like him didn't deserve to breathe the same air as fighters. With a glare that could freeze blood, he banished the boy, warning him to vanish from his sight forever. Suddenly, a lackey approached, whispering that the professor summoned him to the storage room. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Deep within the storage room, the puppet master spoke. The professor demanded true gladiators, not these insects, declaring that the entire underground was hungry for Jisen's next bloodbath. Kim Jin-woo stammered, explaining that finding worthy opponents was impossible when most lacked stamina and the rest were paralyzed by the fear of pain. The professor's eyes narrowed dangerously, asking if he was admitting to incompetence. Terror gripped Kim Jin-woo's throat. His voice shook as he denied it, pleading that he merely needed a little more time to cultivate the talent. When pressed for a timeline, the boy gambled with his life and asked the professor for 1 month. The man scoffed, reminding him that it was he who took a street rat in fake sneakers and draped him in luxury. He warned that their wealthy clients possessed no patience for a month-long wait. Cruelly, he added that there were plenty of other playgrounds where he could get his dopamine fix if this one failed. The threat was clear: step up or lose control of the hound dog forever. Desperate, Kim Jin-woo dropped to his knees, swearing loyalty and promising to deliver results at any cost. The professor placed his shoe directly onto Kim Jin-woo's head, crushing his dignity into the floor. He gave him exactly 1 week. If he failed to find a worthy sacrifice in 7 days, he would have to pay the price himself. A match between Kim Jin-woo and the monster Jizen. Now that would be interesting. The professor mused that watching his dog fight again would be a delightful spectacle for the clients. As the professor departed, leaving the deadline hanging in the air like a guillotine, Kim Jin-woo was left seething with a mixture of humiliation and terror at the thought of facing Jizen. The hunt was on. He needed a target. Meanwhile, on the sanctuary of the rooftop, the trio enjoyed a peaceful lunch, oblivious to the storm brewing below. Gagaman celebrated winning a giveaway, declaring that surviving on bread alone was a tragedy. The friends urged Jizen to eat more, worried about his slender frame. This rooftop had become their fortress of solitude, a routine escape from the chaos of the school. Suddenly, Jizen's phone buzzed. Sunung immediately teased him, asking if it was Aryam, anxiously checking if the romance was blooming and urging Jizen to read the text. The protagonist stood, creating distance to check the message in private, while his nosy friends clamored for a peek at his love life. Gagaman smacked the other boy lightly, telling him to respect the man's privacy. It was Aryam. She asked to meet at the comic book store. Hours later, amidst the scent of old paper and ink, the two found themselves together. They sat in a comfortable silence, simply existing in each other's orbit. Finally, she gathered her courage, admitting it would be strange to stay silent after her outburst the other day. She confessed that she despised her own voice. It carried the vulgar cadence of her father, a habit she had absorbed since childhood like a curse. She wished she could lock her voice away forever, to hide that ugly part of herself. But she didn't regret shouting that day, because the thought of Jizen getting hurt was far worse than her shame. Aryam revealed her scars. Her mother had endured her father's tyranny until she broke, leaving Aryam behind in that house of silence. That was when she began to retreat into herself, speaking less and less until the words simply stopped coming. Her silence had cost her friends, leaving her isolated. Suddenly, Doyle entered the shop, and the clerk casually mentioned his friends were already there. Unaware of the interruption, Aryam continued, telling Jizen she had embraced her loneliness until she heard the rumors about him, a transfer student who spoke no words. She wanted to know if his silence was born from the same pain as hers. Doyle appeared, his eyes widening in shock to hear her voice. He asked what miracle had occurred to make her speak. Blushing with embarrassment, she mumbled that she had been forced into a corner where silence was no longer an option. Doyle gently asked for the reason. With a warm smile, he declared that the reason didn't matter. He was just happy she could communicate freely now, congratulating her on finding her voice again. A thoughtful silence settled over them until Doyle turned his gaze to Jizen, asking about his story. But Jizen shook his head, signaling that the past didn't matter. What mattered was the present, and since they were together, they should feast. He invited the store clerk to join them, suggesting they close up shop and escape. But as they headed out for a warm meal elsewhere, Kim Jin-woo was drowning in cold fury. The thought of fighting Jizen gnawed at his sanity. His heavy-set lackey muttered that a 1-week deadline was a death sentence. Eyes burning with desperation, Kim Jin-woo screamed at his crew, demanding to know if there were any bullies left to sacrifice to the beast. The heavy-set student refused to swallow his pride, declaring he would rather die than lose to the new transfer student. He announced he had only one devastating card left to play. He spoke of a legendary bully, a nightmare who had dropped out to become a full-fledged gangster. Anyone who crossed his path faced certain doom. Music. The other lackey hesitated, asking if dragging a real criminal into high school drama was going too far. But Kim Jin-woo's eyes narrowed, demanding the name of this weapon. Meanwhile, in the city's dark underbelly, a predator cornered his prey. A loan shark was squeezing a man for being 2 months behind, sneering that hiding was a futile death wish. Tears streamed down the debtor's face as he desperately claimed he was trying to scrape the money together. The enforcer stepped forward, rusted scissors in hand, asking if the man thought they were fools for catching him gambling at a casino. Trembling, the man cried that he went there to win enough for the debt, swearing that just one jackpot would have settled the total amount. He babbled about seeing his ancestors in a dream, convinced that a stroke of massive luck was destined to change his life. The enforcer seized the man's hand, the cold metal of the scissors pressing against his finger. Terrified, the debtor begged for just a little more time. Music. The boss spat on the ground, pointing out that the man refused to work and instead tried to gamble his way out of hell. He asked if they looked like idiots to him. The thug gripping the hand smirked, promising he was an artist of agony and would make the cut clean and precise. Screams for mercy filled the air, but they fell on deaf ears. With a sickening crunch, they severed one of his fingers. The thug stared into the man's soul, stating that the next hour was critical. He had 60 minutes to find the money. Only then would he return the severed digit for reattachment. He ordered the bleeding man to run, and the victim fled into the night, wailing in despair. Music. The boss smirked, asking his enforcer if he enjoyed adding another trophy to his grisly collection. The thug sighed, replying that while he despised low-quality goods, it had been too long since he felt the thrill of the cut. This was the monster the student intended to unleash. Jong Jaai Sunbai, the psychopath who once severed a band member's finger back in high school. His friend shuddered, whispering that the guy was too unstable, a true lunatic even back then. He explained that after serving time in a juvenile detention center, Jong Jaai had graduated from school bully to hardened gangster. Kim Jin-woo looked ecstatic, demanding a way to contact this beast. Even the fat student who suggested it trembled at the reality of summoning such a demon. But the thrill was too great. They imagined the carnage of a battle between a ruthless gangster Sunbai and the invincible transfer student. Desperation clawed at them. They were in no position to care if their champion was a gangster or a cold-blooded killer. The plan was set in motion. Unaware of the looming shadow, the main quartet headed out for a peaceful dinner in the city. Hyung grumbled about leaving the house, but Doyle retorted that he couldn't just rot away in his mother's store every single day. Doyle reminisced, mentioning that Hyung used to shine on stage, though the boy noted it felt like a lifetime ago. Aryam dismissed it as just a phase, while Doyle pressed on, asking if the boy was still in a band since his guitar skills were god-tier. Music. Sensing the mood, he shifted the topic, debating between street food or Chinese cuisine, but fate had a cruel encounter waiting for them. The loan shark's black sedan rolled down the street. From the window, the predator spotted 4 familiar figures walking nearby. He ordered the car to stop, a twisted grin forming as he told the boss he needed to greet some old friends. Stepping onto the pavement, he called out. As he approached, he confirmed his suspicion the prey he had been waiting for was right there. Music. The thug casually mentioned it had been a long time, but for the boy, seeing this monster again was like staring into the abyss. Pure trauma took over. He stumbled backward into Doyle, trembling violently. The gangster laughed, asking if he had seen a ghost. Our video ends on this cliffhanger. If you enjoyed this dramatic recap, please smash that like button and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.